So these days they call it pre-kindergarten or pre-K. In 1969 New York, 4- and 5-year-olds went to nursery school. I met my nursery school teacher in my driveway where she pulled up in her new 1969 station wagon. It was the first station wagon I've ever seen. Do you remember the 1969 station wagon? Okay, so it had a little, the back part of it would go down and form a ledge which your future teacher can pick you up on and sit you on so you could dangle your feet while she talked to your mom. I couldn't get down, but I didn't care because it was so much fun. Now, I think you all missed it. No, you did. You missed it and you got to be more alert for this story. Because when you sent your kids to pre-K, did your teacher come to your home and have a private conversation with you while putting your child in a position where they could not escape and eavesdrop? No, something was weird about my nursery school. And your challenge is to figure it out before the story ends. My first day, we each got a little bar of soap, like a hotel soap, and a lecture about how we should wash every day. Roger really liked his hotel soap, and he started doing this inane song and dance with it. And he had his left hand in his pocket, the right hand held the soap, and he started dancing around saying, soap, soap, soap. So I joined him, and we just sang this really bizarre thing. We'd crouch down and go, soap, 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 like that, until our parents picked us up. And the funniest thing was that he kept one hand in his pocket the whole time while he was being all wild and stuff. It was hilarious. I loved Roger. I really hated Rosa. Rosa was nasty. I was too young to take it personally, but thinking about it, she wasn't nasty to everybody, but she was really nasty to me. And she'd hit me with an open palm sometimes. And so I just tried to avoid her. That winter, my mother gave me a Santa Claus pin that was huge. And if you pressed its nose, its eyes would flash red. This is a great gift for a young Jewish boy from his Jewish mom. It was probably on sale, okay? So every time I pushed the button and the eyes flashed at Rosa, she would start being really nice to me. And so she'd forget and start being mean. I'd hit the button, the eyes would flash, and she was nice to me all day. Then I didn't wear that pin again, and so Rosa started getting nasty, but my mother gave me some advice. You gotta bleh her and pull her hair! I didn't know what bleh meant. In retrospect, playing the tape in my head, I think she was saying punch, and I didn't know what punch meant. So I couldn't bleh her, but I could pull her hair. And I did it once and her eyes got really big and frightened, and then she never hit me again, and she did start calling me Dad. So I didn't like Rosa, but my best friend was Ilsa, whose name was similar, and I loved Ilsa. She was my bestie. She was very thin, she had blonde hair, and we would sit next to each other during gravel time. So gravel time was, we had these little plastic bins of aquarium gravel, and you take a spoon, and very calmly hold the gravel, move it to the next bin, and dump it. And that's what we would do. That was gravel time. I looked at her once and she had a bloody nose. And it came out, when I said it, it came out kind of weird, but I said, oh, Ilsa's got a bloody nose, like that. And she went, I do not have bloody nose! I do not have bloody nose! And she just kept saying that. And then Mrs. Heacock came, that was the teacher, with 2 goons, because she actually had several goons. And the goons dragged her away, all the time going, I do not have bloody nose, I do not have bloody nose, I do not have bloody nose, like that. And I never saw her again. And so I was depressed for a long time because I caused my friend to disappear. After 3 days, Eddie said she never existed. And he knew her, he knew she existed, but he said she never existed. And so I did not like Eddie, not just for that, I hated Eddie. Eddie, because Eddie was always smiling, had a stupid smile, and stupid little twinkly eyes, and a stupid little pug nose, and stupid little hair, and this stupid leg. I hated Eddie. And once Eddie was poking me, going, we had joy, we had fun, we had seasons, and this, and he poked me in the eye, and I was crying, and I was sitting on Miss Heacock's lap, crying and pointing at Eddie. And then Eddie turned to me and he smiled. And I yelled, hey! And I jumped down and I grabbed him with one arm and I punched him with the other. It didn't do anything. I pulled his hair and he still was grinning. And I was pulling and pulling on his hair, and that grin stayed, and it was like Excalibur from the stone I was pulling. And suddenly that grin just turned, and he started wailing. And he ran away and sat on Miss Heacock's lap and was pointing at me. And I got this really weird feeling I never knew before, and I certainly didn't put it into words. It was like closure, or justice, or now that I'm pretentious, a dramatic irony. What I felt at the time was I felt like Batman. So yeah, Eddie was horrible, but after that, as I'm watching, then I went to try Kelly. I would try Kelly every day. Trying Kelly meant going up to Kelly and saying, "Hi, Kelly," at which point she would put her face an inch from mine and say, "I'm not your friend anymore." Now, why did I do this every day? Because once in a while she'd go, "Hi," and then we'd play all day. Now, my mother had advice about the Kelly situation, which was, "Oh, have some pride. You yell at, next time Kelly says hi, you go, 'You weren't my friend yesterday, you're not going to be my friend today.'" I got to use that line when Mom was there because one day all the moms visited it. So the moms were sitting there watching us play while some goon was telling them stuff. And Kelly said hi, and I said, "You weren't my friend yesterday? Why should you be my friend today?" And all the moms were looking at me, and then I turned to my mom and I said, "Can I play with her now, Mom?" So Mom was really embarrassed. Diane always played with me. Diane and I like to play on the Bug. Now the Bug was a VW Bug, a real car that was in the playground. You could climb on it, you could go in and pretend to drive, you could honk the horn, you could open the trunk, you could climb in the trunk, you could go under the car and see what the underside of a car would look like. 1969, not a lot of emphasis on child safety. And I remember the Bug arriving. I remember I was looking out the window one day and somebody drove a car onto the playground. A couple of goons did. And my friend Diane said for sure, no, that car has always been there. And Eddie said the car had always been there. And Ilsa, before Ilsa ceased to exist, said that that car had always been there. And everybody did. Roger didn't, because Roger ceased to exist before the car came there. So it was really strange. And the thing is, I liked playing with Diane a lot, except Diane would make up these hilarious songs. That I liked. But one song in particular she would sing would end with, "And your mommy's not gonna spank you." You'll go, "Wah!" But then she didn't stop. She didn't stop. She'd go, "Ah!" And she just held that note until you got bored and left. You could talk to her, she just kept holding the note. Okay, so that was playing with Diane. One more, I don't know if you figured out what was weird with my nursery school yet, but I hope you realize that all my memories of nursery school are kind of surreal. So the last story, and then I'll tell you, was Thomas. So what happened was I came to nursery school one day, and I had a laugh-in temporary tattoo on my arm. Now back then, temporary tattoos were what we today call stickers. But my big sister bought it for me, and she got in trouble for wasting money, and she gave me this Goldie Hawn sticker, and I was determined it was going to stay on my arm the whole day. This was hard because the sticker kept saying, "Peel me, peel me. It will feel so good if you peel me off your arm." And it would too. I really wanted to peel it. But I wanted it to be there all day, but peel me. So I wound up, I was sitting on the windowsill, right by a brick wall, leaning against it, just fighting not to peel Goldie Hawn. And Thomas walks up to me, and he notices the sticker, and he reaches his hand out, and I said, "Don't you touch it, Thomas." And Thomas is reaching his hand. I said, "Thomas, don't touch it." And Thomas touches it, and then he starts to peel it. And I said, "Don't touch it!" And he starts to peel it, and I said no! And he starts peeling it, so I grabbed him by the hair, and that trick didn't work, and I slammed his head into the brick wall. And now Thomas didn't cry, because Thomas never ever cried. But he started to howl like an animal, and that was a really scary noise. So I said, "Stop it!" And I slammed his head into the wall again, and he wouldn't stop. I slammed his head into this brick wall, and then Mrs. Heacock and a couple of goons came. The goons took Thomas away. Miss Heacock took me away like I was some kind of bad kid, but I was not a bad kid because I had warned him. I had warned him several times. It was not my fault. Justice, Batman. And she sat me down And she was not yelling at me, she sat me down and she told me what the word deaf meant. And she told me how Thomas could not hear what I was telling him and how Thomas could not hear my apology. And it was a long time before I stopped crying. And then she told me the rest. She told me that this was an experimental school, that 1/3 of the kids were normal, that was her word, 1/3 of you are normal, and 1/3 are mentally or physically handicapped or both. And that Kelly was never ever going to be able to see very well, and Eddie's leg was like that because he had polio, and that Ilse and Roger weren't coming back because they had this horrible disease that people get. She said that Rosa was normal like me, but I think in retrospect she was lying, that there was something up with Rosa, and I think it had to do with her father. And so, I guess I caused her to blow the experiment because she wasn't supposed to tell me anything and she told me everything. Or maybe I helped the experiment because I taught them something. I taught them that if you take a sweet, nice kid and put him in the middle of an environment that he has no hope of possibly understanding, that he's going to cause his best friend to die of cancer and he's going to beat a deaf kid senseless. And had there been a follow-up study, they would have seen me and they would have seen a kid who never ever hit anyone again, even when he should have to defend himself, and an adult who still is afraid of peach pits, because peach pits look like Thomas's howling face. And maybe she would have learned, or they would have learned, that it's a pretty bad idea to experiment on little children. Thank you.